Alright, I want to keep this video nice and short. What we're working on is simplifying radicals. Some terminology. Mathematicians use the term radical to talk about taking what's called the nth root. And I know that's some new terminology, but nth root. What that means is what number times itself this many times equals the number in here. So we're so used to the square root that we don't actually even write that 2 anymore. We just say square root, we ignore the 2. We read this as square root. So square root of 4 we know is 2 because 2 squared equals 4. But if I asked you what the cube root of 8 is, I'm asking what number to the third power equals 8. The answer there is 2. We could do the fifth root. The fifth root of 243, for example. The fifth root of 243 is saying what number to the fifth power equals 243. And the answer to that would be 3 to the fifth. We don't really need to know that for this unit, but it's worth knowing. We're going to work on simplifying square roots. So the square root is asking what number times itself once equals what's inside here. So we know this. The square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 1/4, that's a good one, is the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 4 is 2. But what about numbers that don't simplify to be so nice? You know, square root of 5. Well, we're just going to leave that as the square root of 5. Square root of 10. Well, we're just going to leave that as square root of 10. Square root of 20. Well, we're not going to leave that as the square root of 20. So what's different about 5 and 10 and 20? Well, 5 is 5 times 1. 10 is 5 times 2. 20 is 5 times 4. And 4 is a special number when we talk about square roots. 4 is a square. So we say that the square root of 20 is actually the square root of 5 times the square root of 4. Square root of 5, I don't know what that is, but square root of 4 is 2. We like to put the number in front of the radical, so when we write sloppy, we don't get confused and think that this is the square root of 52 or 5 times 2 inside the radical. So we always put that 2 in front, and we say the square root of 20 is actually 2 root 5. So let's do some practice problems. I'll write a couple square roots down. You see if you can simplify them to the final answer. We'll do one more example. So the way we're doing this, take a number like the square root of 54. Think of two numbers that multiply to get 54. It doesn't matter which ones. Most of you would have said 6 times 9. Now when I see a 6, I think of a 6 as a 2 and a 3. When I see a 9, I think of that as 3 times 3. So I can group these together in pairs and I can say, alright, I've got a 2 3's and then I've got a 2 and a 3. I'm just reorganizing the multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9 and the square root of 9 is 3. 2. There's no other 2, so it stays in there. 3, there's no other 3, it stays in there. And I'm left with the square root of 6. 3 times the square root of 6 is the square root of 54. So I did that one a little differently than I did the other day in class. But look here, what I'm saying is I've got these 3's here. If I multiply those two together, I get 9. And the square root of 9 is 3. 2 times 3, right? There's no pairs here. There's no extra square. If there was a 2 here, I'd have 2 times 2, and that would be a 4. And the square root of 4 is 2, and that 2 would come out of the radical. So try a couple examples here on your own. Tell me, what is the square root of 60? And what is the square root of 84? Pause the video and try those. Alright, so with 60, I see 6 times 10. With 6 and 10, I go, alright, well that's 2 times 3 and 2 times 5. Oh, now I can see this as, 2 times 2, that's a 4. 3 times 5, that's 15. The square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 15, there's no squares there. So this just ends up being 2 root 15. 84, I see a 4 and a 21. 21 is 3 and 7. So that's not a square. This is a square. The square root of 4 is 2. So this ends up being 2 root 21. We'll practice simplifying a lot of radicals before we jump into the quadratic formula tomorrow. Don't forget, we have a quiz. If you write Go Gators at the top of your quiz, I will give you a bonus point on the final exam. All right, peace.